Hi everyone, we had some pretty interesting discoveries lately that I want to share with you that are pretty important for the current Spiritborn builds, especially the meta builds around World of KEPELEKE and the Midnight Sun Ring. So there has been a lot of development about stuff we've discovered. There were also a lot of bugs and double dipping. I'm not going to go into those, but there is something that is going to be pretty valuable to know about how these setups are made. And it's also something that I've been starting to integrate into my own build guides, for example, the ones I have on Maxroam. And that is that World of KEPELEKE works with resource cost reduction. It sounds a little bit weird because what the item does is that it consumes all of your resources to then give you an extra damage buff based on how much resource you have at time of cast. The way this is usually played is that it combines this with the Ring of the Midnight Sun to give you a full energy restoration every time you attack. So ideally, this looks something like this. If you look at my Vigor globe right now, the resource bar, it just goes down and up and down and up every single attack. And you see here, I'm constantly critting. So I always proc this Rod of KEPELEKE and I get a huge damage buff. Now, the cool part about this is when you have more resource cost reduction, the game thinks that you actually have more resources available, and resource cost reduction becomes a damage multiplier. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you. So effectively, when you have resource cost reduction, you have a larger pool that the Rod of KEPELEKE consumes, and then you deal more damage. So for example, I have been using this on my Rake build that I have been playing on stream lately. A lot of people have been asking me, what is this build? Like, how does it work? Why do you use that helm? Like the Loyalties Mantle, for example. Well, this is mostly because, this is mostly the reason why I made this build actually, because I found this and then I was very excited to actually try this out with the Rake build. Because you have a perfect combo here. We have a Jaguar skill and Jaguar Hall, which is kind of meta right now. It's a very powerful Hall choice. So a lot of builders are running this. And I was like, man, I really want to try this combo now with a resource cost reduction. So I went for a Loyalties Mantle build, which is pretty unusual right now in the meta. But because of the 60% resource cost reduction, we actually gain a pretty massive damage bonus. So if you look at the numbers here, so when I attack right now, I do something like 10 million, 15 million, 5 million. So yeah, something like 5 to 50 million. If you look at this here right now, this is like my typical hits. But now when I equip the Loyalties Mantle, which has no real damage stats or anything like that, it just has a 60% resource cost reduction. And then also this rune node doesn't do anything. Right now I've unspec'd some important nodes here like Revealing and Viscous Shield, so they're not interfering with my damage numbers. So when I do this here, you will see that my damage goes way up, and you see now I do like 30 million, 15 million minimum, 40 million there. So damage is way higher on this setup now because I have the Loyalties Mantle equipped and have extra resource cost reduction. So 50% resource cost reduction nets you effectively double the damage, and 60% is actually times 2.5. So this is a lot of extra damage. This is also the reason why, for example, when you play a Quill Body build or a Crushing Hand build or something, whenever you click a challenge shrine, you're suddenly much more powerful. Most people have probably noticed this when you have been playing those builds. Also, I get a question a lot. This is the reason why. The Channeling Pylon sets your resource cost to 0. It effectively gives you 100% cost reduction as far as I know. And this is actually an intended mechanic. And the Rod of KEPELEKE gives you a ×4 damage multiplier when you have a channeling. So it kind of caps out at 75%. Resource cost reduction, so you cannot stack infinite amounts of resource cost reduction and then do infinite damage or something like that, like with the channeling shrine. But you get a ×4 from the channeling, or in just the Loyalties Mantle case, you get a ×2.5 depending on the affix roll. This also means that, for example, Starless Skies is actually a really good item as well, because it has the same effect. It has a 50% resource cost reduction effect. So you see now, if I combine those two things, my damage will go even higher once this is stacked up. And see now I'm critting there for like 70 million. Like 40 to 70 million or something like that, 80 million even there. You see it's even higher. So of course the Starless Skies also gives me an extra damage buff on its own. It has this plus 50% damage, but then I also get a ×2 from the resource cost reduction. So even though we don't really care about the resources, we actually have more damage output thanks to the resource cost reduction when combined with the Rod of KEPELEKE and then triggering it. What it also means in practice is that when you have enough resource generation on a gear already to make this Rod of KEPELEKE plus Midnight Sun combo work, there's usually a requirement of 1 roll of resource generation. For example, you can have it on a Shroud, you can have it on a Jens, or you can have it on like a Ring Temper or so. This is how most endgame setups are built, so that you only have one source of these as like a resource generation bonus. And with a good Midnight Sun ring, you can get to the point where every hit restores your full resources, and then you have the combo online. And then you have some free like jewelry tempers. And in this case, you can actually temper resource cost reduction like this one. And this 15.3% resource cost reduction is actually a pretty notable damage increase, something like 17% or so. So basically what you have to do is, this is a 15% resource cost reduction. We have to divide 1 by 0.85. So 1 minus the resource cost reduction value. And then you see here, this is the damage bonus. In this case, 17.6%. And there's not really any other temper that can give you this much damage just like that. So it's actually pretty valuable temper to put here on our gear. And in this case, for example, even on an amulet, you can put that. So here right now, I have also a resource cost reduction. This just boosts your damage even further. Now you don't get such a benefit from a challenge shrine anymore because of the cap, but overall it's actually pretty valuable to put in those items. Now, does that make something like the Ring of Starless Skies actually good? The answer to that is kind of. So there have been some setups floating around lately that I've been also talking about. Like, I think Ring of Starless Skies could make it into some meta builds, and now we've actually seen those appear because Ring of Starless Skies has this rather large damage multiplier. And for example, what some people are doing is that they are actually not running the Midnight Sun because it doesn't actually really add anything to the build. Yeah, you get a bit of dex, but everything else on this thing is kind of useless outside of the resource restoration. And the dex is not really that crazy important. So what you really use this for is for this KEPELEKE combo to give you like full resources all the time. But some people have been swapping this to the Starless Skies instead, and they can generate the resources in other ways. For example, on Quill Volley, people do this with like a weapon roll that has chance to restore resources. So maybe you can find an item like this here in my stash. But this is like one way of doing it, where you just have extra like lucky hit chance. I don't have an item right now, but it exists on the glove. And like this, you can also restore resources. Not as efficiently and reliably as the Midnight Sun, but with the high lucky hit chance that Quill Volley has, for example, it is good enough in like large pulls to kind of just fill up your entire resources and then use this massive damage multiplier from the Starless Skies. Because just the resource part of it is already times 2. Then you have the 50% bonus from the damage. So those together are times 3 already. Then you also have way better stats than the Midnight Ring offers here. So we're talking about something like a times 4 damage increase when you make that combo work. So technically, if you can proc your KEPELEKE 1 in 4 attacks, then a Starless Skies is already a stronger option. And that doesn't include the double dipping that comes after that, which, well, basically makes Starless Skies even more worth right now until those bugs are fixed. So overall, actually pretty good choice. Now, I do not really recommend this for like general blasting purposes. Like, you know, when you're like farming and speedrunning and stuff like that, I think Midnight Sun is the way, because you don't need the damage currently on the Spiritborn, and the Starless Skies will be inconsistent, especially on builds that are not Quill Volley, because Quill Volley just has by far the best amount of lucky hit to benefit from these kind of lucky hit effects that I just mentioned. You can put that on a glove. And the other core skills, yeah, they will have trouble proccing this. So I have not actually tried it yet with Crushing Hand or Rake or something like that, but they don't really look that good on a lucky hit front, where Quill Volley actually has a lot of it and then can relatively easily get away with the Starless Sky stuff. But even so, I think in farming, where you just kind of one-shot everything, probably not the greatest idea. Now, another thing you can do is that they actually combine the 2 rings. So that's also something I've been trying today. And this is actually also not really that bad. You can just have the consistent KEPELEKE effect with your Midnight Sun combo, and then you can also run Starless Skies. Now, the thing is that a lot of Spiritborn builds are very starved for aspects. And for example, we have this redirected force meta right now, with the block chance stacking with resolve stacks. So basically every core skill build runs that. And then you have one more slot, and this is usually Moonrise, because your core skill becomes a basic with the item here. And then this is a very powerful bonus. Or in some cases, you go for something like the Fell Soothsayer that people are using right now. It also has a bunch of bugs that allow you to like one-tap bosses in 150 and stuff like that. So if you want to go full bug abuse, then you have to do something like that. But yeah, realistically, there's not really many slots here to put this. And giving up a ring slot is kind of valuable, even with the really high raw power that the Starless Skies gives you. And I mean, you know, you can put some pretty important aspects on a ring, and then you have this resource cost reduction effect, and so on. So you can actually make a normal ring relatively powerful on a comparable level to Starless Skies. but Starless Guys can be an option, especially when you need the res from it, because it has a lot of all res. This might be just enough to really like allow you to maybe do some other tweaks in your setup. So for example, on Crushing Hand, I've been trying this. For example, a Banished Lord's Talisman setup versus a Unyielding Hit setup with armor stacking versus a setup that actually just runs the Starless Skies instead. So no overpower, no armor stacking, but just this ring instead as like, you know, a replacement. And they all actually turned out relatively similar. So it is an option right now. Starless Skies is actually a pretty good item because of this KEPELEKE and the resource cost reduction combo that it can do here. But normally I probably would not really recommend it as the primary choice, because it seemed like just a legendary ring was usually a bit better and gives you more flexibility as well. In any case, that's about it. So hope you enjoyed this, hope this helps you. Stay tuned for some guide updates. I've already reworked parts of the Crushing Hand guide. I'll also work some of the other mixed role guides, for example, that I have, the Touch of Death and Quill Volley. So stay tuned for that. And otherwise, I think it's also a pretty interesting new discovery here. So I've been working with this and it actually works great, especially here on the Rake. I really like this Loyalty Mantle combo. But yeah, this is what I got here. Hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more updates from me for Season 6 and see you guys next time.